folks, and welcome back to another episode of Spurs Up. I'm Matt Bumbaca.
And I'm Jack Taylor.
And we are giving you guys a Gamecock rundown, starting off with the women's basketball team who just won the SEC championship. And Jack, tell us more about that game.
Yeah, it was their fourth straight SEC tournament championship, coming against Mississippi State, the #1 ranked team in the tournament.
They were undefeated heading into the game.
Their last loss was at the hands of the Gamecocks in the national championship last year, so they are not too fond of the Gamecocks, I can tell you that. It was a pretty solid victory. They won by about 9 points, and Asia Wilson had 16 points and 8 rebounds, and it was just an all-around normal Gamecock game for Dawn Staley and her team.
Yes, Asia Wilson dominated, and she has won 3 straight SEC Player of the Year awards, and she is a finalist for the Wooden Award, the Naismith Trophy, and the Lisa Leslie Award, which goes to the best center in the country. I think that she has a chance of winning all 3 of those.
It wouldn't be very unlikely to see that happen, and I think that now they have an automatic bid into the tournament. I think that as of now, they're number 7 overall, so I think while they should deserve to be *1, they just beat the #1 tournament seed in the tournament. I think they're still going to stay at #2 and have those first 2 rounds here in Columbia.
Yeah, it'd be exciting to see if the Gamecocks did get a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. I think that they can after that big win against Mississippi State. And for Dawn Staley and Asia Wilson, the hardware, they just keep collecting all the accolades, and it's exciting to see where they go in the postseason.
Well, the problem is I'm going to ask you about this, is that they are in the same bracket section as UConn, which is why we'll probably see them stay at #2. So inevitably, in order to make it to the championship, they're going to have to play UConn before that final game. Do you think they have what it takes?
I do, but that would be an extremely interesting game. We did get blown out by UConn earlier in the season, but things change when it comes to March, and Dawn Staley has these girls ready to play.
She's going to have to update their defense a lot because UConn is fire from the perimeter. They do not miss. And that's very strange to see from a women's team. That's not something that you normally would see.
Yes, sharpshooters.
A lot of sharpshooters. And so I believe that it could be done during the second half of the game this season between the Gamecocks and UConn. They started to come back, but at that point, the deficit was far too large. So I don't know if they have what it takes this year. Honestly, I don't know if they would have had what it took last year. And if Mississippi State had to beat them, I don't know if we could have done it.
Yeah, hopefully we're not on the same side of the bracket as UConn so that the Gamecocks could advance as far as possible.
Unfortunately, that's what the projection looked like. Now moving on to men's basketball. Started off the SEC tournament on a good note. They defeated the #14 Ole Miss by 1 point, 85-84. It wasn't a buzzer beater, but they were in the lead and they almost let it go.
Yes, that Ole Miss team is pretty poor. They had a horrid SEC record coming into the tournament, and it was a close game. The Gamecocks just pulled out a win, 1-point win, 85-84. And I mean, Chris Silva has played well. He's been the best player on that Gamecock team all year. It was just sad to see them lose in the next round against the Arkansas Razorbacks.
Yes, unfortunately, they took a loss to this #6 seed Arkansas Razorbacks last night in the second round, and it was a game where they just didn't get off to the right foot. They were slow on defense, they weren't attacking on offense, and they just weren't able to get anything going. They were losing 36-28 at the end of the first half, and they were able to come back a bit. They actually beat Arkansas in the second half, if you could say. They scored 36-33, but it wasn't enough to come by. And they had multiple players with double-digit points. They had Booker, Silva, and Kotsar all scoring double digits, but it just wasn't enough to get them over the hump.
Yeah, final score of the game was 69-64, and it just, like you said, it just wasn't enough. They started out slow, and they just couldn't rebound from there.
Now, do you think the Gamecocks in the offseason will make those changes and pick up these recruits and get these new players? Do you think they'll be able to have a comeback season and be where they were last year?
Yes, I think that the big key for the Gamecocks is guard play, and you're going to lose some veteran guards this season like Wesley Myers and Frank Booker, both graduate transfer students who are only here for a season. They will be gone next year. But Frank Martin said after the game against Arkansas, that they shot, from a guard standpoint, shot 0 free throws. Frank Booker and Wesley Myers and Beatty all did not get to the line for a single free throw. And that, just being aggressive from a guard standpoint, is needed for the Gamecocks. And I think that Raheem Felder, he could shoot, and he's going to be back next season. And Brian Bowen, the addition of Brian Bowen, 5-star recruit, it's going to be interesting to see how well the Gamecocks can play next year, with also Chris Silva and Mike Kotsar coming back.
See, I'm hopeful. I know that Chris Silva will come back, and he and Kotsar will come back. And Silva was just named the first team All SEC, and he was also named the co-SEC Defensive Player of the Year. So he's got a lot of accolades under his belt and a lot of experience. And then getting Brian Bowen and Raheem Felder will be nice. I don't know about Rakeem's had a year off. He's been doing stuff in training and in the gym and practice, but I don't know how much rust he might have accumulated. And the same with Brian Bowen. I mean, he's had a while, and he was a 5-star recruit at one point. I don't know if he's stayed at that level. So I think it's going to be.
You're interesting to see if their development kind of dips down?
I mean, when you have that much of a rest and that much of a period where you're not getting to play, it takes a toll. And you can do as much as you want in the offseason in terms of practicing, but it's nothing compared to the real deal. So, I mean, Rakeem has that tournament experience under him, as well as Sylvan Kotsar. I just don't know. And another thing I'm worried about is if they can't make it back and if they have another lackluster year, does Frank stay? Or do they give him the boot? I understand that he was able to make it to the tournament in Final Four, but they could classify that as a fluke. And what do you think? Do you think he would be on the hot seat?
I don't know. Frank Martin is a great college basketball coach, and I really have nothing bad to say about him. I can't.
He's definitely a very great defensive coach in terms of offense. I don't know how high he ranks, and I think that might be the issue that they would like to address.
Yeah, I think they just need solid offensive players, guys that can attack the basket and can shoot, and you get guys like that in Rakeem Felder and Brian Bowen next season.
As in terms of maybe an X factor that could come through.
Yeah. I mean, I think that Silva, the way he's developed his entire career, you see a step each season. I think that he's going to continue to develop. I think that he's going to be he was the leader of the team this season, but I think he's going to take an even bigger role next year. And at times you could see this year, he's the anchor of that team, and getting the ball to him in the paint was a focal point of that offense, and he really would dominate at times in the SEC. So I think that he can be a very dominant player in the SEC next year.
And then we're finishing off with Gamecock baseball, who's had a very topsy-turvy season so far. They're 8-5. They haven't won a game on the road. They've only played 2. One was at Clemson, one was at Greenville. And so I don't know. Their last game was a win over North Carolina A&T, which is not a very formidable win.
Yeah, was it 12-2?
It was 12-2, and then they were going to play Appalachian State, but that was canceled due to the weather. So now they're going to come up, and that was right after their loss to Clemson. They lost the series 1-2. However, they were able to give the undefeated Clemson Tigers their only loss of the season so far.
Yes, that game came at Founders Park, the first game of the 3-game series, and it was off a walk-off sac fly by T.J. Hopkins. It was a big win for the Gamecocks. They sadly ended up losing the next 2 games of the series, but it's funny. It seems like every game is at Founders Park because they've only played 2 away games this season.
And it's been a lot. And speaking of which, they're going to have another 3-game series starting tonight against the Princeton Tigers.
Yep.
And that's going to be one game Friday night, and then a doubleheader on Saturday, as that Sunday game was canceled due to weather as well. So that's going to be
interesting.
It will.
The doubleheader game on Saturday, definitely going to be fun.
See what kind of toll it might take on them. And then after that, they have one more non-conference game against Harvard, and then they start their conference play, and a rough start at that, taking on the #1 Florida Gators. At least they're #1 right now, which again will be a home series, but
Florida's one of the best teams in the country.
I believe they only have 1 loss as of now.
They probably are the best team in the country if we're being serious. And hopefully the Gamecocks could just steal a game. That's really what I'm thinking. Steal a game. Maybe if you could win the series and take 2 games, that's a huge morale boost, and that would carry them through SEC play, I believe.
Do you think it should be ranked if they were able to at least win the series or even get a win?
If they win the series, I definitely believe that the Gamecocks should be ranked in the top 25. If they steal 2 games, 100%. Not even a question.
I don't entirely believe they have what it takes. Like I said,
you think they get swept by the Florida Gators?
I don't think they get swept because, I mean, they were able to take on, obviously Clemson was number 14. They weren't #1, but Clemson was still a very good team, had not lost yet. So they were able to get a win, and obviously Founders Park is a very good environment to play in, and it's a very impactful environment to play in. They do well at Founders Park for the most part. So I think that having that home series is very beneficial to the Gamecocks. So I can see them maybe squeezing out a win, but I don't think that they could win the series.
Yeah, the Gamecocks definitely should be comfortable at Founders Park now. They've played there a whole lot this season.
Well, that's all for us here today, and we're going to take a break next week as it's spring break for South Carolina students. So until next time, South Carolina.
Spurs up.